Good morning. Thank you to everyone for joining online. Welcome to NOPSEMA's first information session on our safety cases and HSRs, what's changing. I would just like to start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that to any First Nations people online today. We'll jump right into the presentation. We've got a couple of things to cover today and we will be trying to keep it to a strict 1 hour session. The session will be available online through our website post the event, and we'll have Q&A at the end of this session. Could I just ask that any participants online also mute their mics and any of their video while we're on here to make it smooth enough for everyone on board. So to give you a brief introduction, for those who weren't able to attend the AAP session that we did last month, we'll give you a general overview that there has been changes to the regime of the safety regime for the offshore oil and gas sector. This has been a long ongoing project conducted by DISA, our policy agency, and it's been to implement some changes into the OPGGS Act, and the OPGGS safety regulations have now also been amended. The new changes are set to come in from the 12th of June, so we're working to educate ourselves and the industry as well on what this means for yourselves and how we're going to be regulating into the future. In terms of the information sessions that we're running, we'll be trying to do these once a month. Currently, we have done the first one, which was just an introduction to the changes happening in February with AEP. This one online today, which will cover safety cases, safety critical systems and HSRs. Next month, we're planning to cover the design notification scheme and the vessel activity notification schemes. In May and June, we've got those as to be advised at this stage, just to take any feedback from any particular topics that people are wanting to see, and to also work in with the next lot of updates that are coming through. So at a glance of the changes that we're going to be covering today, we're talking about the administration of the safety cases, workforce health and wellbeing, how sexual harassment and psychosocial health is now being considered, and then the role of the strengthening the HSRs. Some of you may have been attending the HSR forum this last week, and you may have had some of this information as well. Okay, I'm going to pass over now to Chris Bourne, and he will take you through the safety cases aspect. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Amanda, and good morning, everybody. Yes, so we'll be talking about safety cases, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Rod Gunn to talk about health and safety rep changes. So a question on everybody's mind, so we'll go there first, is transitional arrangements. So we have to look first at assessments that are underway under the current regulations. If your safety case completes its assessment with us before June the 12th, then it'll be accepted under the old regulations and assessed under the old regulations. However, safety cases where it can be expected the decision will be made after the 12th of June have to comply with the new regulations, which means we will be looking particularly at Regulation 215A and 2.53, I'll come to those, to ensure that your safety cases comply with the new regulations. So what we're suggesting is that if you have a safety case to submit between now and the 12th of June, that you look to see that those safety cases actually comply with the new regs, because the concern is that if they don't comply with the new regs and the decision date goes out beyond the 12th of June, then we're going to have to request that you do comply with the new regulations and assess against those new regulations before we can accept, and there's potential delay within that. And I just wanted to make this last point as well, that the changes to the safety case regs don't just apply to new safety case submissions, so new facilities. If you're putting in a revision for some kind of campaign or a 5-yearly revision, something along those lines, anything that you assess to us for assessment, submit to us, sorry, for an assessment for a safety case, we will be looking that they comply with the new regs past the 12th of June. So just be aware of that as well. Next slide, please, Amanda. Thank you. Can you just go back one? Thank you. So first off, there's a new sub-regulation.
Excuse me, am I the only one that's not seeing any slides? All I'm seeing is a video of yourself, I'm afraid, Chris. Apologies if I'm interrupting.
No, thank you very much. Amanda, could you check that, please?
We see the slides.
We can see the slides.
Oh, I see the slides, Chris.
Yeah, I can see the slides.
All right, thank you. It must be a problem at my end. Apologies for that.
Good. So yeah, thank you for that. Anyway, it's a good check. So section 2.52. What we're requiring here is that you establish a direct link between technical and other control measures and measures that are critical to safety. It means that effectively we're going to be looking to see that the operator has identified every technical and other control measures specifically as being critical to safety. The reason for this is at the moment there can be a little bit of confusion and grey area when it comes to inspection and enforcement and investigations about what control measures are critical to safety. So we're just asking, or the regulations just asking, that be made very clear. And the perspective from NOPSEMA is that anything that's identified as a control measure in the formal safety assessment is a control measure that's critical to safety. Thanks, Amanda. So there's a new trigger for safety case revision, and that talks about the loss or removal of a technical or other control measure identified in the safety case as being critical to safety. So back to that critical to safety idea. We don't see that this is an additional burden on industry. We believe that what the regulations do is clarify the existing expectation of revisions to safety cases. It's taking away that grey area and that potential for misunderstandings about what requires a revision and what doesn't. We believe the regulations intend this applies to long-term and permanent loss or removal of controls, not temporary changes. We're developing guidance on what loss and removal and testing mean to provide clarity to operators. And the regulations also provide exemptions for testing or for ceasing or where activities have ceased that use that control measure. So there is still a requirement, of course, under decommissioning regulations to remove things that are no longer in use. But if you've ceased an activity that uses that control measure, then we won't be seeking revision immediately. Thanks, Amanda. Okay, so this goes a little bit past safety case content. We're talking about notifications of dangerous occurrences. Thought it was important to point out that this section 241 used to refer to damage to safety critical equipment. It's a term we're all very familiar with, but the new regulations talk about technical and other control measures critical to safety. The reason for that is to broaden the understanding of control measures beyond the physical technical control measures to include SMS elements. We have always considered SMS elements as control measures, but this is making it clear that damage to or loss or removal of some kind of SMS or other soft measure that's critical to safety, that term again, is notifiable under section 241, dangerous occurrences. And you can no doubt see the relationship to the revision to safety case regulation I was just talking about in terms of loss or change or removal. This is talking about short term. The revision to safety case is talking about permanent. We're developing guidance to be try and be as clear as we can to operators what the difference is and how these regs should be applied. Thanks, Amanda.
Just apologies, Chris, I accidentally missed this slide, so I'll just jump back to that one.
Yep, okay, thank you. All right, so back to the top, doesn't hurt. So I talked about section 2.52, identifying which technical and other control measures are critical to safety. So as I said, we'll be looking in our assessments for that identification through whichever means an operator chooses to provide that identification. Section 2.56 relates to what we need to see in new safety cases for production and GHG facilities in terms of the design notification scheme. I won't dwell on that today, but we will be giving you more information on that on April the 15th. Section 215A, controls to prevent sexual harassment, bullying and harassment and reporting of incidents. So this is clearly going to be a focus for us after June the 12th. And as I said, new safety cases, revised safety cases, we'll be looking for that information. And we've also made a note here on section 226(1)(e), just to point out that it is clear in the regs that design notification requirements will inform our decision making relating relevant safety cases. So when the design notification scheme becomes operational on June the 12th, then when we're assessing new safety cases, we'll have to look for how those safety cases do comply with the design notification requirements. Could you skip on, please, Amanda?
Yep, that's your final slide, Chris.
All right, so that's back to where we were. So just a repeat on the transitional arrangements, BAU for anything that is being assessed at the moment and where it's going to be decided by us before the 12th of June. However, after the 12th of June, we have to comply with the new 2024 regulations. So, for instance, the sexual harassment control measure requirement, the identification of critical to safety controls, and we're obliged to look at those and to make an assessment on how you've addressed those. So what we're recommending is that you start to address those in your submissions now so that there is no avoidable delays past the 12th of June. And just to reiterate, those changes apply to all safety cases, so new or revised. The transitional arrangements apply to all. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chris. We'll save questions all to the end session. We'll jump now over to Rod, who's going to do our presentation on the HSRs. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, so the changes relevant to HSRs in terms of strengthening their role, safety management related documents. So HSRs now can request the operator to review a safety management related documents. It's the new clause 37A of the Act. I'll touch on that in a couple of slides' time. Training, HSRs must attend initial training and refresher training each year with the cost covered by the employer. So the new aspect of this is the annual refresher training, which was previously not a requirement under the Act. We have 3 training providers that have approved courses, NOPSEMA courses. There's WHS Foundation, Unity Training Services, and TAFE Gippsland. TAFE Gippsland being based in Melbourne, the other 2 being based in Perth. WHS Foundation run the refresher training that's on their website. The other 2 training providers are looking at developing and having refresher training courses available post 12th of June. HSRs now have the right to choose their training provider as long as it's accredited by NOPSEMA. HSRs also can be members of the Health and Safety Committee now, so there is the ability for them to be members. The election procedures for HSRs are now harmonised with the WHS Act. That's the Onshore Act that covers all states and territories in Australia. The operators now have a responsibility to provide NOPSEMA with a list of HSRs, and that includes updated lists. So if there's been elections and additional HSRs, then we're to be informed of that. Next slide, Amanda. Thank you. Access to safety cases. I know that most facilities have safety cases in some form or fashion available to the workforce, but now it is a legislative requirement that workers can have access to the safety case while at work on the facility, either a hard copy or electronic copy. Fatigue management. Duty holders now must consider a broader range of factors that cause worker fatigues before allowing a person at an offshore facility to commence work. This is not directly related to HSRs, but it's an aspect that was worth recognising and raising. There is a clarification of the definition of health now. The definition of health in the Act is changed to physical and psychological health. And there's also protection against discrimination and coercion. That's been strengthened to align with the WHS Act, again, to be consistent with states and territories in Australia. Amanda, the next slide, please. So some new requirements for safety case for facilities. Safety case facility must describe measures put in place by the operative event, sexual harassment, bullying and harassment. And there's also reporting requirements. The operator must provide to NOPSEMA a notice of the incident of sexual harassment, bullying and harassment as soon as reasonably practicable, and within 30 days a de-identified written report detailing the incident and the actions taken or proposed to be taken to deal with the incident and prevent or lessen similar incidents occurring at the facility in the future. Next slide, please, Amanda. Okay, going back to the new clause in the Act 37A, HSRs will be able to request a review of safety management related documents. So that request is for circumstances that exist that affects the health and safety of workers at the facility and the operator has not adequately reviewed the document in response to the circumstance. The request is to be done via an approved form, which will be on the NOPSEMA website. The approved form is a form developed by NOPSEMA that's been approved by the CEO of NOPSEMA. The form provides a mechanism to document the circumstances that exist and how it affects workers, the reasons why the HSR believes the operator has not adequately reviewed the circumstance, the actions that are required to be taken is as soon as possible after receiving the request, the operator must review the documents and respond in writing that either the revision is necessary and the revisions the operator intends to make and the reason for each revision, or revisions are not necessary and an explanation of why revisions are not required. Next slide, please, Amanda. So I'd provide a little bit more clarity around this. We are developing guidance notes and further guidance on this particular 37A, but the definition of safety management related documents is safety management related document is a document prepared by or on behalf of the operator of a facility that sets out in whole or in part a system for managing OH&S at the facility. You would recognise these typical elements. Most operators operating offshore have typically 13 to 15 elements within their safety management system that are made up of these type of arrangements, type of documents, permit to work, through to safe work procedures, through to contractor management, training and competency, etc., etc. So a HSR will be able to request a review of a safety management related document if a circumstance exists. Now, yes, there is a range of processes with operators, stop work processes, incident resolution, incident HSR committees, etc., etc. The legislation provides this additional mechanism for HSRs to utilise when circumstances exist. So an example that I can give is that HSR may notice that workers are at risk to harm from removing equipment because of a confusing safe work procedure, leading to people to miss key steps in the preparation of the work, in particular generic safe work practice that might not be suitable for unique circumstances that exist at the facility at the time. So HSR may form the opinion that the operator has not adequately reviewed the documents and that there is a risk and uses this mechanism to request a review. So that we're working on some further guidance on this particular clause, and we'll be providing that in due course. Amanda, that briefly covers the aspects of HSRs and some other matters, so I'll forward it back to yourself for managing the questions. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks Rod. So we will move straight into questions now. If you can raise your hands, we'll go through that in order. If we can start with HSR questions, that would be great. We've got Rod here for a while before he heads off, and then we can move over to the safety case content from that. So open to questions. Yes, Graham.
Yeah, g'day, Graham Bowhite from Vermilion Oil and Gas. So it's a question regarding the submission of revised safety cases and compliance with the new regs. So we just happen to have a safety case submission 5-yearly due middle of June, so right around the time that we have these transitions. And I was just wondering if there are or is any intended flexibility with regards to sort of developing that revision to be compliant with the new regs versus deferring that compliance with new regs until next submission, which is for us due sort of a number of months or a few months later. Just in terms of if we get started now, I mean, we're obviously well into already preparing that revision, given the timeframes we've got. So yeah, it's a question just on flexibility and whether it's a case by case or whether NOPSEMA are applying a hard and fast rule, black and white, that anything submitted after the 12th or accepted after the 12th, sorry, will need to be compliant with the new regs.
Yeah, hi Graham, thanks for the question. The advice we've received is that there is no flexibility within that regulation. Once we get to the 12th of June, then we have to apply the new regulations.
Okay, that makes it clear. Thanks.
Okay, we can go to another Graham Fairclough.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Graham.
Yes, Graham.
Yeah. Hi, Chris. Hi, Amanda. Graham Fairclough from Noble Drilling. I popped 2 questions in the chat for Chris. One was regarding submission and your comments there. The 12th of June, does that reflect an assessment decision date or a submission date?
That's an assessment decision date, Graham.
Thank you. And second question regarding the notification of dangerous occurrences. You mentioned that dangerous occurrences where critical safety control measures and I think you said including SMS controls are lost or removed is notifiable.
Yeah.
Can you give just to put that to visualize that for me, can you give a hypothetical example of an event and loss of an SMS control that would be notifiable? I'm just struggling with that, understand that in context.
Yeah, so not exactly in your field, Graham, but we've seen a few examples in the production world where, for instance, there hasn't been the full complement of control room operators on the facility that the safety case talks about. So, as an example, from the training and competency part of the SMS, there was a failure there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have a question from John.
Welcome first. Thanks, Amanda. All right, I guess the HSR's request to publish the safety documents process to get related to safety. The trigger for that, I first thought was like the grades issue, but that could also be proactive in that sense, like encouraging the reviewer, making sure things are right, as you explained, stop to review. That could be taken both ways, like reactive or proactively, or that trigger for HSR to request the review of documents.
Sorry, John, it was, I don't know if others were able to hear that clearly. It was fairly jumbled. Could you just
so just the trigger, more around what's the trigger? Triggers for the review of the documents requested by HSR. So that be an observation, like an all stop or something of a concern that hasn't eventuated. We need to, put your hand up, say we want to review this document. Okay. So I feel like they covered yet, as you mentioned. Is there a bit more just around that? What would ordinarily expect in the workplace to trigger that?
Well, the legislation,
it could be 5 minutes, it could be a few hours or days. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the legislation, the Act states that a circumstance exists that affects the health and safety of workers at the facility. So that is, that's in the eye of the person who's viewing that circumstance, and that the operator has not adequately reviewed the documents in response to that circumstance. So that's the cold heart of what the Act says. We are providing some guidance, but it's really it's situational in terms of the circumstances. I did provide that example of removing equipment or a safe work practice. There's some other examples. It might be a dropped object where there was an investigation by the operator, and it was circumstances exist that the HSR is not satisfied that the investigation has got to the root causes, and that circumstance may still be prevalent. So we're working with industry and the HSRs in terms of providing a range of examples in our guidance material that provides a little bit of clarity about the interpretation of the circumstances.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so situation really going on. Circumstance.
But certainly operators have a range of other day-to-day things, you know, the ability to stop work, the ability to raise issues and all that sort of stuff. So that doesn't preclude people using those mechanisms, but this is a legislative right that the HSRs has if he feels he needs to use this.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what I was thinking of with those other, normally you would exhaust those first, into a backdrop to still raise it. Regulations, but if the other mechanisms are working effectively, then this would be a natural
correct. Yeah, correct. Correct.
Yeah.
It's obviously the review of the Act and all that felt that it was important to have this requirement, but yes, it is one in addition to a range of other measures that most operators have dealing with the day-to-day safety.
Yep, thanks for that. That means
Excellent. Thank you, John. Move on to what I have as Mornington Room.
Hi, Adrian here from Subsea 7. Just a quick question about the technical and other control measures. I assume that obviously that then becomes considered as critical to safety, which I believe you mentioned can also include SMS elements. So does that therefore make them SEEs, thus requiring validation in the safety case?
Not my understanding, Adrian, that anything that's not a technical control will now require validation. I haven't seen any changes in respect to that.
Thanks, Chris. That's all.
Thanks,
from
Adrian.
our room.
Okay, we had a question in the chat from Martin, is regarding design notifications. The new regulations are somewhat open to interpretation as to the level of detail that is expected. Will NOPSEMA be issuing guidance as to what it expects?
Yeah, hi, Martin, and you're absolutely right. We're developing guidance at the moment, and the people who are writing the guidance have been instructed to see if we can describe as best we can that sweet spot between having enough information for us to make an assessment, but not have it so late in the process that the operator is unable to take account of our comments. So, yeah, there is guidance. I saw the first draft this morning, so hopefully we'll be able to give you a pretty good steer of the level of information that we're looking for.
And just to note, our next session will cover DNS, so they're the good one to jump into to have an update then from NOPSEMA. Our next question we've got again from Graham.
Thanks, Amanda. Sorry, Chris. Yeah, it probably is going to be addressed in the next session, but just as a leading question for that on DNS again, is there going to be some guidance provided in terms of dovetailing design notifications and safety case revisions, specifically, I guess, for new facilities, probably a little bit easier, but for changes to existing facilities and major updates and changes, etc., and just the sequencing of submitting and then accepting design notification followed by safety case revision and how they, I guess, are sequenced or potentially overlap in some cases.
Graham, it's a good question. I'll take it on notice. For the broader audience, though, bearing in mind that a revision would only apply to a significant change to a facility, so we're seeing that as a change of fundamental use of the facility, a fundamental change of services going through the facility. But I'll take that on notice, Graham. I'll talk to the team about it and ask them to talk to the next information session that we give.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, next question is to Darren.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, hi Chris, Darren Griffiths here from Amplitude Energy. Just back earlier in your section around safety cases and the need to comply to the new requirements for decisions post 12th of June, you made a comment around the design notifications there. So I just wanted to clarify that. So in theory, if we were to submit a safety case to which that would apply and it was to be decided in June, we're saying we basically need to be getting that DNS to you now, even though it's not in effect, in order to allow that sequence of events to occur?
Darren, we're aware of that paradox. We haven't fully developed guidance on that yet, but we're aware that we do need to have an answer to that question. I don't have one for you today, but yeah, we are aware.
Oh, okay, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, I can't give you more.
That's all right. Look for it. Maybe it's something that'll get covered maybe a little bit more in the next session on DNS, perhaps. Yep.
Okay, thank you. On to Michael.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Mike Long. I'm the rig manager of the Transocean Endurance, currently offshore. So if there's any PAs in the background, please excuse them. I have a question around the new and the old requirements around bullying and harassment offshore. When I looked on the NOPSEMA page, it does say there is a requirement to report this, but I'm a little unsure of what the actual requirement is, because it seems to indicate that if due to this harassment, the individual is incapacitated for 3 or more days, that's when you'd report it, not before that. Is that the case?
Under the current arrangements, what I'd suggest is that when you become aware, that you treat it as something that a reasonable operator would immediately investigate. So not to treat it as an LTI type issue, but more as an issue for a reasonable operator to investigate. So we'd expect to hear about it. Under the changes, that's made more explicit, I guess, where you're required to operate an incident once you become aware of it. So
Gotcha.
it's not saying wait until you've verified it. It's not saying wait until your investigation's completed. It's pretty specific about saying once you become aware, then you report it through the reporting lines.
That's fine. And as a follow on from that, because we had an assessment done at our company, and I was talking to my HR manager this morning a little bit about it. With that, so if you have a notice from NOPSEMA, that goes on the web page. It happened to us with the DD1 a few years ago. That goes on the web page. Something like this, obviously this is sensitive for the individuals. Is that published?
So the requirement for notification is that the information is de-identified. So that's the first protection. Second protection, I guess, I mean, this isn't written down in the regulation, but it would be very unlikely for us to issue any kind of enforcement that spoke about individuals. If the situation at a facility was bad enough in terms of management of psychosocial health and safety that we felt a notice was warranted, then we'd be talking about your safety management system.
Gotcha, understood. So it wouldn't be about the individual case, it would more be about the general management of the place itself.
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you, Chris. That's clear. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Michael.
Excellent. Okay, we'll move on to John. Thank you.
Yeah, another one would run for me. HSRs, you've got some break. The training requirement every 12 months for refreshers is there. Obviously, with the dynamics of offshore, I do the vessel cases. The anniversary of that versus campaign rosters, availability of being able to book them in. Is there some flexibility around that? Absolute training. I have read the
short answer is yes, as soon as reasonably practicable. So it's not rigid. It has to be 12 months to the day of the last one. It's within before or after the 12-month anniversary, and obviously there's a whole range of factors that that are going to affect that in terms of courses availability, people's rosters, etc., etc. So yes, there is flexibility. I suppose if it drifted to 2-3 years, that's when it starts to be probably more of an issue. But yes, so the short answer is yes.
Rod, I'll just get you to speak to the question that came up in the chat that you responded to, please.
Yeah, the question was, is it mandatory under the new regulations that HSR needs to be nominated for offshore facility, i.e. vessels which operate within international crews, high turnaround crews and move between regions often? The Act changes and regulation changes don't have any changes in that regard. So the current arrangements still apply. So I'm happy to answer the question offline just to get some further clarity on the response there. But in essence, there's no change to the current Act or regulations that make it mandatory in that scenario. But I take that question further on notice. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you, Rod. Okay, I don't have any other hands up at the moment. Do we have any more questions for anybody online? We still have some more time left, which we're running well on schedule here. Okay, so there's no more questions so far online. I'll go to Rod first and then to Chris just for any closing statements about the presentations today or any content.
Just keep an eye on our website. We'll update when we've updated guidance. We'll make that aware that the relevant guidance has been updated. That process is happening over the next 2 or 3 months. So I just encourage people to keep up to date with that. That's all, Amanda.
Thanks, Rod. And Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I just wanted to advertise the fact that we'll be producing FAQ, frequently asked question documents on the different topics that we'll be presenting at these get-togethers as well. So there's one published imminently on safety case changes, and there'll be others coming down the track as well. So find them on the NOPSEMA website, of course. But just thank everybody for your attendance this morning. Really good questions, and we've made a note of the ones that I couldn't give you an instant answer to, and we'll work them into the guidance and into the FAQs and ask the team next time to address them if that's relevant. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So I'll just close up for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this session. This is quite new for us, so thank you for bearing with our little technical issues with jumping around with our teams. In terms of the continued engagement with industry on this, we are committed to making sure that we are keeping our industry updated and included. We are updating all of our guidance material. As you can imagine, there is often quite a lot to go through and things to pull together. So we will keep you updated as they become available. If you haven't already, on our website, we have a dedicated page to the changes that are going on here. It gives you links to the Act and the Act changes, links to the explanatory statement for the regulations and the direct changes between the two regulations. As well as Chris mentioned, it has the FAQs on there for you to go through, and we are regularly updating those, and we aim to update those in time for each of our information sessions, so you'll have the most up-to-date content at each session. So our next online session will be Tuesday the 15th of April, same place, online. We will again distribute an invite out, and please feel free to forward it on to the relevant people in your organisations. If there's people who want to directly nominate for coming along to any of these sessions, they can do so by the email that's on the website, the communications email. The next 2 sessions for May and June, we will again give you an update soon on what the key topics will be for those, and we're continuing to update as we move through. The main intent of the one in June is to help answer any questions, since that will be post the regulations going live. But please keep track of what we have available on our website. Please feel free to send through the questions, or better still, make contact with your regular contacts that you have with us here in NOPSEMA so that we can talk through any questions you may have. If there's nothing further for anybody, I thank you all for your participation and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.